Hello and welcome to this Adobe Photoshop tutorial where we are going to look at how to create digital banners. On my screen you'll see some of the most common sizes, and I've also included a Google cheat sheet of some other banner sizes. For this particular exercise I'm going to focus on these sizes, and for the assignment you're going to choose a vertical format and then either a more square or horizontal format. For this demo I am going to show you how to use artboards in Photoshop. I've saved all of the assets within these folders on Google Drive, and I've also included the font options, which you can install by double-clicking on the font and click Install, or if you're on a PC, you can right-click and it should give you the option to install. So for the deliverables, you're going to create 2 ads. So again, here are the assets, and here are the logos in this folder. First, let's set up our document. I am using the Essentials workspace up here at the top icon. And let's go ahead and collapse these using this double caret so we have more workspace. So let's create a new document. From the home, you can do New File or File New. And I'm going to type in one of the banner sizes. Let's do 160 by 600 pixels at 72 resolution. And I do want artboards for this. So I'm going to check that box and click Create. And if I open up the Layers panel, and you can drag this to view more, you'll see we have an artboard and one layer. You can press Command 0 to fit the artboard to your screen. And I want you to take note here in the bottom left corner where you can see a %. If you do Command 0 to fit the artboard to screen and then Command minus, you'll see that value change, and the actual size or finished size at 100% is going to look like this, which is quite small. Let's rename our artboard by double-clicking on the artboard text. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new artboard using another size. And you can see these plus signs here, which will allow you to create a new artboard in that direction from the original. I'm going to show you a few different layouts. So let's do 250. You can see our width and height are up here in the top toolbar. I'm going to change those values to 250 by 250. Duplicate this artboard. Let's do 300 by 200. And the dimensions of the artboards, the width is the first value and the height is the second value. So I know 160 by 600 is a vertical format. And you'll see up here in the left, there's the Move tool, and when I click and hold, there's the Artboard tool. And that will allow me to draw another custom artboard, which I can then change the value. If you'd like to delete the artboard, you can come over here to Layers, click and drag to the trash can. And I'm going to go ahead and rename these artboards to keep it organized. And I'm still looking up here for the width and height. Make sure you are in pixels. You can right click on the rulers here and see. And you're only going to need to choose 2 of these options. If you need to move the artboard, you can see as I hover over that selected artboard, I can click and move that. So now we have our artboards, which are essentially like folders. The 2 brands you're going to be creating for this assignment are 2 grocery stores, Aldi and Hy-Vee. And before we get started, it's a great idea to open up those brand websites to get an idea of the colors, fonts, and styles of calls to action being used. So here I've pulled up Hy-Vee.com, and you can see their brand colors, which are primarily red, white, and black. And some of their calls to action are this outline button with text, this flame icon with the price or weight, and you can see the sans serif fonts being used. If we look at the Aldi website, you'll see the blue buttons they're using red. They also have a red background with white text for the price and weight. And you can see the size of the headlines and the size of the buttons and text, and get an idea of the hierarchy for headlines and buttons, as well as the smaller descriptor text. And I want you to look through these backgrounds and decide which is going to work best for this vertical format, which I'm going to create first. And keep in mind that these can be rotated depending on what it is. Let's go with one of these flower images and drag and drop it onto the artboard. I would like to work a little bit larger, so I'm going to zoom in with Command plus or your zoom tool, Z for shortcut. And we are in the transform currently, so I can hold down Option and Shift while I click and drag to scale the image. And if you hover at the corner, you'll see the curved double-sided arrow. And holding down Shift, you can rotate it more easily in 90 degrees and decide how much of the area and composition this flower is going to take, keeping in mind where our call to action might be, which is usually at the bottom. If we go over to layers, you'll see within that artboard, we have the placed image. And now let's go ahead and drag and drop in the logo. And you'll find that these logos are .eps, which means it's a vector logo. So let's open that in Illustrator. And selecting the entire logo, you're going to do Command C or Control C to copy and Command V to paste as a smart object onto the artboard. And I'm going to scale this, holding down Shift to maintain proportions, and decide where this logo is going to be. And you can see there's not very good contrast with the background. So with that object selected, go to your Effects FX icon and go to Color Overlay. And we want to change this to a white color, full opacity, and click OK. Now we need to add some text with the Type tool, so T for shortcut. And we can either click to create point text, or we can create a text box by clicking and dragging a box area. And now we're going to come up with a message, which you are welcome to copy and use. Now you can see we do have very limited space with the width of this banner. And you can see it's currently blue text, depending on what you may have last used in the program. So select all of the text, and right here, or in your swatches down here, you can click to bring up the color picker, and we want something with good contrast, so white would be great. And I'm going to navigate up here to change the font to one of the two font families that you've installed. So with either the text highlighted or just clicking on that text layer, you can change the font family. So depending on what the message is and the size of the headline, we need to decide whether the text will flow from top to bottom or if it can be rotated to the side. You can also open up your character palette by going to Window, Character, and change the line height if you need to. We don't want it too much. And for the alignment, we need to decide, let's go ahead and left align this. And with the Move tool, you can relocate where that text is placed. Maybe we want to try another instance, so we can duplicate the layer by dragging to the plus sign, hide the original layer, and double-clicking on that object. Let's say we want to try rotating the text. And if we click onto that text object again, we can also scale the text without having to change the font size here. So with Command T or Edit Free Transform, we can hold down Shift to scale the type and hit Enter to apply. So I'm going to play around with this and decide what I want the messaging to be and how that's going to look. I'm going to make another copy, Command J. And you can move the text by clicking on the layer and holding down Shift and using your arrow keys. And you can rename your layers to help with organization. So Command T to transform. And now we need a call to action button. So to do that, we're going to draw a shape over here at the Shape tool. U is that shortcut. And let's do a rectangle. And I'm going to actually have the logo on top of this color as well. Let's actually go with a black background, which in your properties panel, you can change the fill color here or up here at the top. And to get the same color, I'm going to copy one of these images. Let's just right click on the image, copy image, and paste into our artboard. Command V. And now we have enough, whether you drag the image around, to try to sample this red color. So with your eyedropper, I for shortcut, we're going to sample the red. Now we can hide that image and go ahead and select the rectangle object again. And back at shape or your properties, we are going to use the color picker, or you can see since we just sampled that color, it is listed under recently used. And now we have that in our swatches panel if we need to use that color. So I'm going to use a black background, and in my layers, I'm going to reorganize this below everything except for that background. And I'm going to hide this color overlay now because we have a better contrast with the red and black. Let's make this text the same red color. So selecting that layer, and in your properties panel or the character palette, you'll see color, and we're going to sample that red. Or find it in your swatches of recently used colors. If you need to adjust anything, you can click on the object or in the layer panel and Command T to transform. And now I'm going to create a button with the shape tool again. You can see there are other shape options. So let's go ahead and click and drag to create a button. And now you can see that shape has options for the corner radius. Since this text of the logo is so small, I'm going to mask that out. So in the layers, with the logo selected, I'm going to click the mask icon and zoom in with your Z zoom tool or Command plus and minus. And I'm going to use the selection tool on that mask to select the logo text. And with white as the foreground, black as the background, we're going to do Command X to cut on that mask. And now we can duplicate other text or add new text with the type tool. I'm just going to drag onto the plus sign and make sure that's above the button rectangle. And we can select both objects with Command click to click both of those. And we can center them using the alignment tools and scale any of the other objects. If we decide that's too boxy, which it did look so, let's create a new layer above the background, the plus sign, and I'm going to use the brush tool, B for shortcut, and let's grab a black or a very dark color, and we're going to paint, check your opacity here, and you can change your brush size with your left and right bracket keys, and I'm going to create a little bit darker background, which that's way too much. So we're going to create a mask on the layer with the mask icon and use the brush tool with black as the foreground on the mask to bring back some of the image. So we have more of a vignette, which gives us more contrast between the text and the background. And if you need to bring back more from the mask, you can toggle with X or clicking the swap arrows. And maybe we need to group some of these layers. And V, the letter V gets you back to your move icon. Maybe if instead of adding black to the background, we could also add a drop shadow to this text. With that layer selected and the FX icon, you can either do outer glow or drop shadow. And I'm going to add a black or a very dark color. And you can see as I change the opacity and decide if it's a subtle drop shadow or if it needs to be heavier. In this case, I don't think we need to go too heavy since we have good contrast with that large type. And you can decide if it's offset. I don't think we need much of an offset here. And maybe you want to duplicate that drop shadow to this text. With this FX layer selected, hold down Option and click and drag it to this layer. And now we have that same drop shadow applied. And then just check your spacing here. Maybe you want to decrease this dark a little bit more. And you can also change the blend mode. To multiply might be a good option. All right, this is looking much better to me. I'm just going to make sure this looks centered visually. And we could use the same image by holding down Option and clicking and dragging that layer onto another artboard folder. And we can minimize this artboard now. And we can continue copying elements from this one with that method, holding down Option, clicking and dragging to that new artboard. And maybe this time we need to rotate it back with Command T and double click to get into that. Type and adjust. And you can use your arrow keys up and down to change the size. And your Move tool to click on that layer. Maybe this time we want to center the text. And I'm going to go ahead and click on all of these objects, or this whole button, and hold down Control or Command to click on the logo. And now I'm going to hold down Option to click and drag, copy into this new artboard. Maybe we want to try another background image on this one. Holding down Option and Shift. And you always want to make sure that the original image size is large enough so that when you scale it, you don't have pixelation. And again, I'm going to check what it looks like at 100%. So Command Z out. And I'm going to add a layer of some darkness here to help with the contrast. And my brush tool can change the opacity. And then maybe we need a mask on that layer where we swap and take away. It's hard to see my brush size right now. And we might need to add a drop shadow to the logo as well by clicking and holding down Option. And you can double click to edit that effect or turn it off. Maybe we need a little bit of white. And change the blend mode. You can transform it. And maybe change the opacity. Another option we might want to see by duplicating the button, click and drag the folder to the plus sign. And let's increase this, Command T, and holding down Option will scale from both sides. And maybe we want to shift this entire button to the bottom. You can see I did accidentally copy that text, so I can drag and drop it to the trash and hide the other button. Make sure that subheading text is out of the folder. And we can look at using another font. So that could be another option. All right, that's looking good. Let's remember to save your file often. So File, Save As, and save to your exercise folder. And I'm going to fill in a couple of these other ones. Holding down Option, I'm going to click and drag it over this artboard. And now with Command T, you can transform. Now I'm going to look back at this button style, and maybe I want to right click and copy this image to sample the colors again. Command V to paste. And I can use that layer and keep it turned on as I draw the shape tool. And be sure to zoom in. Selecting fill in the color picker, sample the blue, and let's add a slight border radius here. can use your arrow keys and tab to preview. Let's grab the type tool again. Command T to mimic this size. And maybe we need to bold it a little bit more. And now we can hide that reference layer. You can shift select those layers again if you need to, and use your arrow keys to position. Maybe I want to duplicate this design now that I have it. Let's select that artboard folder and drag it to the plus sign. While it's selected, click and move. And we can change the background if we'd like. And this image has low contrast, so you may need to use some different techniques to increase the contrast so we can read the text. And clip that adjustment layer by holding down Option and click. And now we can adjust the levels even more. I'm going to take the brush tool, do a low opacity, and you can always use a mask. All right, I'm going to show you one more option here. And you can select and drag and drop multiple images if you'd like. With the Move tool, make sure, or in your Layers panel, make sure you have that artboard selected so that when you drag and drop, it's placing it into that artboard. I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter on all of these to place them, and then I can individually transform or scale the size. And they are smart objects, so as long as the images were a high enough resolution, we're okay to scale these without losing the quality if they were rasterized and placed at that size. I'm holding down Option as I click and drag onto this artboard. And remember that these are quite small, so we don't want to add too much copy. And you can click on an object, holding down Option to click and drag it onto this artboard. So now I'm going to drag and drop onto the plus sign to duplicate. And with the Move or Artboard tool selected, I can realign. All right, so here are all of my ads at 100%. Be sure to save your file, Command S, and you can rename any of your artboards by double-clicking on the artboard layer. And let's say we're ready to export these. Let's go to File, Export, Export As, and in this window we can select which ads we want to export and what file format those will be. So if I click and hold down Shift, I can select all of these and change the format to JPEG, and we want a high quality. And if your computer will allow it, when you select all of them, you can change the format altogether. For some reason, Photoshop just crashed every time I tried to do that. So let's save it as a high quality JPEG and make sure they all say that. I'm just going to quick export here and save them to your location. And here are all those image files. So I want you to check your file names to make sure they're all labeled correctly, and be sure to save your working Photoshop file for your own use. I know I worked kind of quickly, but I hope this video helped you better understand how to use artboards to place in your graphics and add text, how to resize them to exact dimensions, move the artboards using the Move tool, copy artboards by dragging to the plus sign to duplicate, and how to add text and create buttons using the Shape tool, and how to add other adjustment layers to give more contrast between text and the background layer. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.